Hi, you're listening on the Paranormal UK Radio. I'm Andy, and with me is my co-host Neil Geddes-Ward. Neil, how are you doing?
Hello, Andy. How are you? I'm fine. I've been always busy. I'm always saying that every time I come on. But February has hit us already. My goodness. The year is passing. It only seems like the other day that we were sort of getting through January and obviously Christmas prior to that. And now we're in February and heading straight into the spring. So quite amazing how the year advances so quickly. And before you've had a chance to really kind of pick up the pace, it's run away with you, really.
Yeah, it's been quite a mild winter so far. I was hoping for white Christmas, but we didn't get that, unfortunately. It was a bit of a mild Christmas, bit of a boring Christmas, really.
Yeah. Those days of Bing Crosby have long gone, I think, of white Christmases, and January was a bit of a mix of overcast and things. So February's kind of bearable, I guess. Is your car running all right in these winter months? Because I know you had a lot of work done it prior to winter.
Yeah, do you know what? Cross fingers, I think it's done now. I've got a feeling that my car is going to be up and running continuously. I think it is a Honda. Honda's a pretty good brand. I think once the little niggling bits have got out the way, cross fingers has been pretty good. A really nice drive. A lot more economical after I've done the oil change and what else did he do? He changed the oil and air filters, I think it was. Made a huge difference. I was driving it and I could almost see the fuel gauge go down as I was driving previously, and then I got those bits done, and now it's as efficient or maybe more efficient than my Hyundai, which was barely used any fuel. So yeah, quite happy with that.
Excellent.
How's things your end? Are you driving? What's your vehicle?
I mean, my car's all right. It's a Volvo. It goes. I mean, I did have an issue with the headlamp bulb, but that's all been repaired and things like that. So that's cool. I've been editing videos over over the holidays and things like that. Our video went up onto YouTube. That's the for those that have listened to us in sort of the tail end of 2018. Andy and I did record a few shows with Marcus Allen talking on the Apollo moon hoaxes, and we obviously did a kind of an in Skype in Vision version of that type of thing, extended with Ben Emlyn Jones, who's one of our regular guests on here, through his HIPAMWO, which is Hospital Portals Against the New World Order. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. his own kind of website and show. And so we all coordinate with each other. And we also had Scott Henderson from Canada talking and showing us his pictures. So if anyone was interested in those two Apollo shows, whether we landed on the moon or not, and you're still kind of interested to see what sort of evidence at least those gentlemen were presenting, head over to YouTube and search for the Apollo Detectives, Part 1 and Part 2. You might find them on my channel, which is Neil Peel, or on Ben Emlyn Jones's channel, because he's hosting there as well. And you'll find a whole host of different comments, both positive for the moon landings and negative, no, we didn't go. Very interesting comments. And so we're planning... Go on.
Very interesting video, wasn't it? I mean, it makes such a difference having visuals. It makes a huge difference having visuals, because it's all well talking about it on radio, but if you can't actually see what we're talking about, whereas this video we can, it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, as well as talking about the visuals, they were talking about the science of things, which I found very interesting. Like your friend Colin came on board, spoke about radiation and things like that. Yeah. So that was all very, very interesting. And we went on for a whopping 4 hours plus. So we're hoping to do another one maybe later on this year. So if we do get up another show with a few more experts, hopefully we'll let everybody know. But in the meantime, thanks to those people that listen to our show on the Apollo conspiracies, and try and look out for it on YouTube. So anyway, we do have a guest which we should get to forthwith, and that guest tonight is Mr. David Graham, and I know that David's there waiting for us. Can you hear us, David?
Hello, Neil. Hello, Andy. Yes, I can hear you fine.
Right.
Hello, David. How are you doing?
Welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Sound levels all right?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yep, all good.
Yeah. Okay.
And whereabouts are you speaking tonight? You're in sort of just south of Birmingham, aren't you? It's Staffordshire, is it?
No, it's Warwickshire, Kenilworth. I live in my little room here in the back of the house. Yes, where I work with clients and have all sorts of weird things going on. Yeah. Yes. So, anyways, it's good to hear you. I'm flattered that you invite me to come on the show, and let's hope it's interesting for anyone that's listening and for us as well.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. Now, you're, by rights, I always get this muddled up. There's people that say they're hypnotists, and there's people that say they're hypnotherapists. Now, I would say that out of the two, I would say you're a hypnotherapist. Would that be correct?
Either is okay. They're both the same, just hypnotherapy used for therapeutic reasons. I use it for hypnotherapy for therapeutic reasons, so I don't do stage things or anything like that. So I'm happy with either expression.
And obviously you've got a whole thing to talk about, really, from what I understand, but how did you become interested in the whole thing of hypnosis then?
Well, hypnosis, I suppose I'll go back to the year 2000. Yeah, the year 2000. I've been in quite a bad depression. I didn't believe in anything like this. I had no spiritual awareness at all. Fortunately, I went for counselling. I'd had suicidal thoughts and so on at that time. I went for counselling. After the counselling, I almost stumbled into a Reiki session and a Reiki attunement straight after it. And I got the bells and whistles then. I was seeing all sorts of visions. I had tingling going through my body. It was a very strange time, but a very enlightening time. It challenged me to consider whether my view of the world as I'd understood it up to that point, whether I got it anywhere near right or was I going crazy. So fortunately, I sort of embraced this new feeling. It was easy to embrace this because it felt good, which is the key bit. And I started to become spiritually aware, meditate and so on. And that led on to an interest in hypnotherapy. And I took a course and graduated from the course in 2006. And right in the very last week, something very unusual happened, which I can go on and tell you about now, even unless it takes you off track from what you wanted to ask me.
No, I'd be very interested.
Okay. Right at the very end of the course, first of all, I'll say about the course, there was a module that dealt with past life regression, and it was very basic. It's sort of almost sort of, relax someone, take them there, then get them out quick before anything happens. And so that was my first experience of regression. However, at the time, I started to read one or two books, Brian Weiss books that you may be aware of. People who are interested in past life regression usually have some knowledge of his books. They're very easy to read, Introduction to Past Lives. And Michael Newton, who focuses on the regressions between lives. So when we're not in a physical body, what happens to us then? I've started reading some of that, and I was kind of not convinced. I sort of thought, well, yeah, it's an interesting story, past lives, but so what? What difference does it make for my life now? Except my brother had a very different feeling over this. My brother was the carer for my father. And right in the very last week of this hypnotherapy course, my father died. And my brother was his carer, and he was pretty stuck. And I offered him a past life regression session, even though I had all those reservations. And it was quite startling for him. It was very relevant for where he was at. But in particular, he started a dialogue with a spirit guide. And what came out of that session was, well, apart from being relevant for him, it was also enlightening for me. We agreed to have some further sessions, and we went deeper into this. And by the third session, I realized that a lot of the dialogue that was occurring for my brother and for that spirit guide was most relevant to me. And I began to understand that I was learning about the territory here, how this works, how it all hangs together. And it was beginning to feel rather like an invitation to take this seriously. And I did, and following, we had 9 sessions. I can tell you a little bit more about them in a moment, because they're pretty interesting. But shortly afterwards, there was a course going, and at the Past Life Regression Academy, it was based down at Dorset Way at the time. And where I was always broke, I never had any money. Suddenly I had enough to do that. And I've got 4 kids. I've got so I had to keep a job and earn money, etc. Yes, I could do this course. And it was like a doorway had opened up. I started to notice bits of synchronicity as well, where, for instance, the no money, then suddenly I got some. The course fell in tune, and even the thing about my father dying, it was something nagged at my mind. It's because he should have died a while earlier. It would have been far less painful for him, far more gracious for him. Yet it almost felt as though he'd hung on until that time when something else could happen. It was almost like a setting up of synchronicity. And, well, so I enjoyed the beauty of it all, really. Yeah, I can tell you a bit more about the sessions if you like, because if you're ready for that.
Yeah, sure. Please do go ahead.
Okay,
just quickly, what did the spirit guide look like, and kind of what background was the spirit guide?
Oh, sorry. It wasn't my spirit guide. It was my brother's spirit guide, so I didn't have a visual of it, But
did he describe the spirit guide that he had?
Yes, sort of. He understood it to be someone that he knew, someone who's in their current life, and this was one of the things that I was curious about, concerned about. Exploring it more and more, I began to realise that it wasn't that. It was something that my brother could get his head around. So, in answer to your question, what did the spirit guide look like? Was it the real McCoy? I wasn't sure at the time, but I trusted it, and I wasn't experienced enough to ask the questions, the relevant questions, to find out whether this is the real McCoy at the time. Does that answer your query, or do you want me to say any more?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite unusual to hear about a spirit guide being so. Are you saying that it was somebody alive that your brother knew, or somebody that passed to spirit that your brother knew?
It took the appearance of someone that was alive. It wasn't someone that was alive, but it took that appearance. My understanding now is that guides can present themselves in a way that makes sense for you.
Yeah.
They can present themselves in a way that has meaning, etc., or has the relevant characteristics that are needed for that relationship to work.
Yeah, I've never
nowadays I understand it in that way. Yeah, sorry, Andy.
I was going to say, Neil, have you heard of any instances like this of spirit guides kind of relating to people who are still alive?
So hang on, we're saying about a spirit guide that is like talking for someone that's not coming through in trance. Is that
no? My brother was repeating what the spirit guide was telling him. Yeah.
And he was identifying himself as a spirit guide of your brother.
He was identifying himself as his name was Ali, but it was Ali, not a Muslim name. It was Ali was short for Alison, who he knew an Alison, and the guide seemed to have the appearance of her face. So he understood it as a spirit that is Alison in this current life, although whether that is so, I very much doubt. It was just something that was connecting with him and offered it itself in a way that he could trust.
I see. So yeah, I think I kind of get what might be happening.
What do you think's going on, Neil?
Well,
it's a confusing one for me.
It is a confusing one, but I think that there's, they say, and I can't prove this, it's only things I've read, and it's, you know, it's up to really each individual to do their own research and then maybe come to their own conclusions, or just take it on board, and that may be a possibility. But I've heard of things where, for instance, you could say come into a lifetime, but you just don't come in as yourself. You think of your higher self as a palm of a hand or a hand, and the individuals that it grows out from it, personalities, as the fingers from the hand. Now, in theory, you could say that hand, as the higher self, dips all those fingers into the same lifetime on Earth in 2019. But they're all at different areas around the world, and they may not know each other. But all those fingers, they move individually. They seem to have their own life, their own, but they're all connected back to the higher self via the structure of that kind of hierarchy, if you like. And they may actually do things that are similar to each other, because in the same way that when your hand grips something, you have to use all your fingers to grip it, and in the same way that these fingers, these personalities, would take a certain task in hand in their lifetime and maybe do tasks similar to the other simultaneous personalities around the world that are part of it. And obviously these personalities could go back into other lives as well. So what my thinking is that the higher self of Ali or Alison was maybe coming through or making contact with your brother. That's what it sounds like to me, even though Ali or Alison was totally unaware of it, and it could be the higher self or the super consciousness of that personality that controls other personalities, if you like, was maybe making contact. That's my thinking, but there could be other reasons.
So kind of along the concept of soul groups, that kind of thing.
Yeah, higher selves can control, like a teacher might have a load of people in their class or something, you know, like a load of toddlers that they all look after, and they all follow the rules of the teacher, if you like, or follow the teachings of the teacher. But that teacher is obviously intimately connected to them in some way. And it could be that this teacher of Ali, although she's presenting herself as Ali, could be the higher self of Ali, and Ali doesn't even know about it. That's what I might be happening, but I don't know. But that's a way of explaining it.
May well be, David.
I kind of think a little bit differently.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. Well, if you consider that, for instance, you are the person you are now, you have those physical characteristics. If you have had a past life, I would say, of course, you have. If you have had a past life, you'd have looked something different. So if you have had several past lives, you'd have looked different and different again. If you lived in an African country, you may have had black skin or yellow skin in an Oriental. So you might be a different gender. So what is it that you actually look like? When you're not in a body, you present yourself, for instance, at spiritualist churches, someone might see the grandmother come through, and they'll recognise the grandmother, and they're wearing the pinny or whatever. Where does that penny come from? They're presented in a way that has meaning for the person that it's intended for. So I know when I used to go to spiritualist churches, people would say, "Oh, I can see someone in the corner there, or what's it behind you?" And all I'd see is little squiggly patterns, energy patterns. And I'd come away very disappointed. I realised afterwards, well, actually, they are energy patterns. That is, what they are. It's how they're presented for a person. That a guide seems to be able to do, a non-physical being seems to be able to do, and it's done for, to present a particular meaning. That's how I'm understanding this.
So moving on, David,
Okay.
how did you get into, I suppose, what you call the woo-woo stuff in terms of the alien side of things and the kind of the between dimensions type of thing? Because that I find that quite interesting, actually. The realm in between kind of the living and what you might call heaven, or whatever dimension there is beyond, that kind of intermediate zone between lifetimes. How did you get into that, and what kind of transpired in terms of information connected to that?
So you're talking about how did I get into connecting with beings that were not in a physical body? Is that broadly what you're asking me?
Not so much that, more beings that are, I suppose, not human, kind of.
Aliens.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my connection. I've had quite a recent connection with this, to be quite. First of all, I've had several clients that I've worked with where they've gone to alien bodies. I've had several clients where they've had stuff attached to them that's been alien. So that's kind of thing happens in regressions, and we work with this. More recently, I went to a spiritist church, and I was standing in the kitchen washing up, and a friend came in and started talking to me, and she suddenly said, do you understand the universal laws? And in a very strange voice. And I said, she's channeling someone for me. And anyway, to cut a long story short, it's not such a long story, actually, because someone walked in a couple of moments later. It turned out that I have some new guides, and it came from that. So that was the introduction. It seemed that I'd been one of them at one time, a Pleiadian, and I started to take more and more of an interest. The interest goes right back to the time I talked about earlier, working with my brother, which was in 2006-07, and it's kind of built up from there. So you refer to it as woo-woo stuff.
I say that very tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of stuff that Joe Public would kind of go, whoa, that's kind of far out.
Yeah, I suppose this is one of the issues that I maybe understand differently to some people. I understand myself as being a soul, and first and foremost that. I don't regard myself as being a human soul. I'm a soul. And I have this incarnation now. What am I doing when I'm not in this incarnation? What was I doing before I came into human incarnations? Where was I? What was I doing? And where were you? What were you doing? And where was any of the listeners? So we exist. And if souls are eternal, then what was going on there before all this? What goes on afterwards? I understand us as being much more universal than we may some people consider ourselves. Yeah. We're much more than just human. Indeed, my understanding from all this is that when we actually come into a human body, that we adopt a kind of restricted awareness of who we are, where we're not really aware of our history for a start, but we're also not aware of our powers. And why? Well, it's a pretty good challenge. It's a kind of branding, I think. It's something where we can test ourselves, because we come way, way, way out of our comfort zone into these bodies, and in doing that, we face all these negatively charged challenges. negatively charged challenges such as, well, various fears, insecurities, feeling not good enough, or a whole host of, human personal issues that we take on, and we try to, and we address. We might run away or get overwhelmed by it, but we address sooner or later, and in that we grow. Now, it's suddenly occurring to me, I'm going way off the question you asked. And I'm going to ask you again to remind me of that.
The alien stuff, how did you specifically realise that you were dealing with ETs as opposed to human spirit guides?
How did I realise I was dealing with, the story about the Spiritualist Church just a few months ago? I asked them if I'm one of them. And I don't know why I asked that. I'd never have expected to ask that, but they answered, "You have been." And some things, how can you say it? Some things we can create a logical, rational understanding of. Yet some things, the feeling is the main thing, because we're still humans here, and we only have a limited understanding of everything that's going on within us and around us. How can I explain this? It's just a growing feeling that's been going on for a few years. It's culminated in that experience in the Spiritualist Church, and which sort of led me to think, well, there's more I should be doing here. I've started a research survey of therapists, of people who are people who have lost time, and
so abductees, kind of.
Yeah, abductees. Yeah.
What would you say the percentage is of this is going to be an interesting one, of people who have had positive alien, I won't say abductions, because if they're positive, they're more like contacts, positive contactees versus negative traumatic abductees? What would you say the percentage wise is?
My honest answer is I don't know, but I'll tell you what I've found so far. And I'm giving some information away here, but I've had 19 submissions so far. It's only started on the 28th of December.
Yeah.
At 19 submissions, and 18 of them been positive. One has been negative.
That's really interesting, because I actually thought it'd be the other way around.
I'll qualify that actually. 18 have been either benign or positive, and one has been negative. So that's what I'm finding so far. But of course, that's quite a small sample, so I don't know if that's if that reflects everything that's going on out there. But that's what's coming up.
It's interesting because I mean, maybe the public perception is wrong, but my perception was, with all things like movies and various kind of shows on TV about alien abductions, is you go back to the old kind of classic white light in the sky, missing time, bruises and marks on your body, and kind of waking up with greys looking in your face and that kind of thing. But it's really interesting that you found one person out of 18 where that's happened. And so the ones that were positive were these people who were taken on board a ship and had conversations with the ETs, or were these ETs that showed up in their rooms? Like how did they make contact, these ETs?
Well, I'll talk about a couple of examples. A guy driving home from a friend's in the countryside, round about where I'm living, and he sees a strong light over a hedge on the left-hand side, and next thing he knew, he was a little bit further down the road and thinking to himself, oh, what happened there? I'm not sure what happened. And arriving home, and when he arrived home on this very familiar, regular journey that he does, he realised he'd lost 55 minutes. Now, I regressed him back to that time, and we worked through what was happening, and there was a lot of fear with him. And but as we went into it more and more, and as he realised that yes, he had gone aboard some spacecraft, and there were some call them greys that were looking at him and appeared to be inspecting him. And yeah, as he looked at it, it's almost like a form of recognition. He suddenly relaxed, and he felt okay. And the next thing he knew, he was back in his car on the road. Now, what I often wonder, and maybe it's this question that inspired me to go and do this survey. If we are souls, as I say, we're not just human souls, we are souls. When we get to the point where we're preparing to go into another incarnation, we may well strike up relationships with other souls to take on particular tasks and present challenges or support each other. And I kind of wondered whether some of these abductions were actually pre-arranged, as in a soul plan before we come into an incarnation. Of course, it's forgotten about. We don't have a memory of that. And we have a natural fear at losing power to something that we don't understand and seems much more powerful than us. Yet at a point there was a kind of was a change. Now, I'm not saying this is. I don't know how widespread this is, but that's the thought. That's a feeling that motivated me to explore this. So what I speculate is that sometimes souls will agree to meet up during a physical life, alien and a human, and for research purposes of one form or another, and that may be what has happened in that case, and it may well be what's happened in a few other cases. Just talking informally with other regression therapists, that there does seem to be some acknowledgement that may be the case in some of their cases.
Neil, anything you got to add?
Yeah, it's interesting because with the fact that people, I mean, when they're coming to you for a treatment, I don't know if that's the correct word, or are they either come to you saying, I've got an issue, or I've got nightmares, or I've got symptoms of some sort, and they want some sort of healing from it in some way.
Yeah.
And so presumably a good percentage of these people aren't expecting to come up with a regression that says, oh yeah, you were abducted for 55 minutes or something like that. Does it come as a great shock to them? I mean, when they're regressed, are they kind of consciously aware of what they're saying, or is it all being recorded and then they're played back to it on tape, and then they're suddenly thinking, oh my God, it looks like I've been abducted by greys or something?
Well, both. It's recorded if they want that, but they also pretty much remember what's been said. I'm thinking of another instance now. This didn't happen for me, but I was talking to a colleague a few days ago where a woman had a particularly difficult pregnancy, and in giving birth, she almost died. This is in Holland. This was, and when she was regressed back to that time to address some of the difficulties that occurred then, she had an out-of-body experience where she went hurtling up into space, and she was met by some ETs, locust-shaped ETs, who worked on her on a kind of plinth or a representation of a hospital bed. And she came back down into her body, and she recovered, where apparently the hospital staff weren't expecting her to recover. And she went on, and she'd forgotten all about this until the session. The session that was happened maybe 20 years later, something like that. So that had a very healing, peaceful effects for the person, I'm told. It's a reassuring, and it's also a sort of getting to know yourself at a deeper level, know your history, and know what you've been through, and the challenges that you've met. And so what happened with that lady there is, and getting that feeling of knowing yourself a bit better is something that's comes through again and again with regressions. With the alien stuff, it seems to help people who feel as though they don't fit, who feel that they're different somehow.
Yeah,
and it sort of helps with a sense of identity in a strange kind of way, or a sense of acceptance of who they are, which they may have struggled with prior to an experience such as that, a remembering such as that.
Have you noticed a recurring in terms of ETs giving to people for the wider good of mankind?
I can't say that. Certainly from guides and so on, yes. I can't say that I've had those conversations. That's not really an area that we've gone into so much. I can't also say that, I've had lots and lots and lots of ET sessions. I haven't. Also, I would say that when I do this work, the focus is very much on the therapeutic purpose of the session. And going back to those sessions with my brother, it's something I learned then, in terms of human incarnations, you can get the times and the dates and the places all wrong. We can get it right, but we're also quite capable of getting it wrong. That's not the important thing. The important thing are the meanings, the themes, the nature of the relationships, how it helps you to understand who you are in your world. So that's the thing that would come through strongly.
If me and Andy sometimes do this devil's advocate thing. Skeptics might come along and say, well, what you're doing, you're just providing a meaningful platform for those people to run through a whole series of psychological traumas, problems, wherever it may be, and they'll bring forth a made-up alien personality, a made-up spirit guide, a made-up history from a past life, which serves then to resolve their issues in some psychological way. What is the kind of answer or the answer you would give, or is there a general answer in hypnosis that people give out to that kind of thing?
Well, does the session make a difference? If it's fantasy, then how come it makes a difference? So really, it's the proof is in the pudding. It makes a difference or it doesn't. One of the things I'd like to get in here, if you don't mind, is the expression past life regression. It sort of implies long ago forgotten memories that it's hard to convince yourself that it has any relevance for you now. I think it's a far more relevant understanding to see that it's actually stuff that you're carrying around with you now. It's stuff that's deep inside of you, and it's there subconscious, and it's some of it's charged. You could have an unresolved trauma from a past life that's in there. You're not aware of it. It's charged, and it reacts to events. So you get angry at something that the person next to you doesn't get angry about, and why. And so going inside and finding out what's there, it's present, because a regression is very much here and now. It's very alive. People are brought to a different awareness of themselves, and they discover things about themselves.
I was going to say, what sort of, in terms of therapy, what sort of problems do people come to you with that you found the regression helps?
Anxieties, phobias, self-worth problems. Some of my colleagues work on, have people with physical things that they're able to resolve. It's physical things in that they've been to doctors, or chronic pains that have no medical diagnosis. They've been through the medical procedures and not been able to get to the root of it. And suddenly that back pain that's plagued them all their life has suddenly started to go, has gone. As things like that can happen quite a lot. Again, I'm sort of leaning on my connections with a lot of other regression therapists, because I connected quite a few all around the world in different cultures. But this seems to be something that can go deep inside a person and help to uncover or to help to resolve the unresolved issues that lie there. So maybe it'd be better if I give you a couple of examples that come to mind.
Yeah, sure, please do.
Yeah. Okay. A lady came to see me who every few months she would have an episode, she'd call it. She'd feel really deeply insecure, nobody loved her, and she'd go out in a car and threaten to kill herself unless her husband and her daughter came there now. And it would happen quite regularly, and it was something that sort of influenced her life in a big way. She came to see me, and we went to the source of it. First of all, she went to her first day at school, and mother leaving her there and walking away and leaving her in a classroom, and the abandoned sort of feeling there. But then going back further than that, beyond that, she went to a place that it became clear it was New York, and she was in a room where she was feeling tense and nervous. It felt like a wake, as she described it, yet people weren't dressed in black, and she couldn't understand what was going on. It soon became clear that she was quite wealthy. She was a socialite, and the Wall Street crash had just happened. And her boyfriend was just sitting across the room for her. He'd got his leg over the arm of the chair, and he was swinging it, and he was relaxed. He'd come out of it all right, and she hadn't. And she went off and, she went to a cliff and she threw herself off. And in going into that and working with the feelings and not being able to trust the boyfriend that he was as solid with her as she thought he was. When it came to crisis, he looked after himself and left her exposed, and she only saw her way out as throwing herself off the cliff.
Mm.
Okay, so what that left with her unresolved at the end of life was a sense of not being able to trust that you're not going to be abandoned. Mm. And so it came through into her life, and it was working away inside her without her really understanding it or understanding why she felt this way. But it came to that. Now I can give you that example because there's a couple of years later that she brought her daughter to see me, so I know that it made a difference, and that she wasn't experiencing those symptoms anymore. So that's a kind of example. Again, I forgot the question that you asked me in the first place.
It was what kind of problems people have coming to you,
yeah,
and how regression in particular kind of helps them get through it.
Yeah, yes, that's it. So the regression is part of it. It's the therapy part of it. So working on that lady there, for example, we'd work on we call it transpersonal work with her at the end of the life, and reviewing what's happened, meeting the characters from that life, and finding out what needs to be said, what needs to be exchanged between them, and to bring us all into a kind of balance. That's what happened there, and it seemed to make the difference, as I say. Now then, let's think there's another one in a similar kind of vein as a chap who was very jealous of his girlfriend. He's got a very attractive girlfriend, and who worked in a very male environment, and he developed a kind of controlling aspect to his personality, and he didn't like to let her out of his sight, and he's always questioning her, etc., etc. And he did it. He got to a crisis stage where she was threatening to leave, and he came to see me, and he went back to a life where there was a young man in Victorian times in England, and he, as a young man, he had a close relationship with his brother, but his brother suddenly died. Then he met a woman and he fell in love, and they got married and they lived together, and then she suddenly died. And he became quite insecure, quite bitter in that life. And what he'd experienced really is that those that come close to him, he would abandon him. Similar kind of theme to the other one, actually, as it turns out. But in having that experience, he was able to understand where it all come from, why he was like that. And again, we were able to work together and try to understand what had happened and work with the past life personalities, and also with his life now as a young man, going back into his childhood and things that had happened for him there, and actually resolve a lot of these issues and and gain an understanding of how he reacts to certain things. So they're examples of how regression can make a difference for a person.
So what would you say would be, I think, best way of putting it, the greatest words of wisdom of how either ETs or spirit guides would pass on to people to help them?
The expression that went through my head, I hadn't prepared for a question like that, but the expression that went through my head as you were saying it is change is happening, enjoy it. It's coming anyway. You might regret it if you don't enjoy it. So, and remember to have fun along the way. I don't go too much on the world changing perspective of all this. We are changing. The planet is changing. We live on the planet. We are changing. We can resist the change, or we can go along with it. And that's kind of how I understand it. And it kind of reflects what I've picked up from some of these sessions and from these guides and entities.
And also they might say, get your yellow vests ready, I suppose. Now, when you take people back, I've seen or read in books on documentaries and things, they don't obviously take them back just to straight away to a previous life. Don't they take them back in, or do you do this? Take people back to an earlier part of their life where you think a problem may lie, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if you can't find any resolution within those earlier years of the present lifetime, that's when you then go further back into a supposed previous life. Is that right?
It depends on what a person comes to me for, but yes, if they're coming to me to work on a particular issue, I I won't say go to the past life. I won't say go to the earlier life. I'll say go to the point where it all began. Or he might say go to the strongest time when you had that experience, or the most severe experience that you've had of that nature. And that might be in childhood, might be in a past life. But we can often go through childhood. Well, we might go to a past. Sometimes we go to a past life and realise in the end that actually going to that past life is almost like a soft entry to going into the childhood trauma that they wanted to avoid, and so it goes that way. Whether as a soul, whether it's happened to us in a past life, it's happened again in this life as a child. It's happened to us, and it's stuff that needs to be dealt with in one way or another. Going to the past life tends to go deeper, in my view, just tends to go deeper inside a person and gets more to the nub of it than some other therapies, in my view at least.
And when people have gone back into past lives, have you tried, for instance, I did see this amazing documentary, God knows, about 30 odd years ago now. I did have it on VHS tape kicking around. I used to watch it over and over again because I was absolutely really taken with it. And it was, I think it was an Australian documentary where they had taken 4 Australian ladies and regressed them to previous lives. One was a Jewish lady, I think, in a concentration camp in World War II, and yet she'd never set foot outside of Australia. Another lady found herself to be a peasant that lived in a farm somewhere in France and things like that. And what they actually did was that they described the villages they lived in, or particularly the lady that sort of claimed that she lived in France, and she even described a marking on a flagstone floor that was in this barn in this village. And they actually went there in the documentary and found this marking that she was describing on this flagstone floor in this particular barn in this village that she said that she came from, yet she'd never set foot outside Australia. And this is obviously years before the internet came along. So it was quite compelling to watch. Do people, when they're regressed, do they go and try and check out the evidence of a previous life that's come through in a session?
Yes, of course. That happens quite a bit. People check out the names and the dates and try to build a stronger picture of where they were, etc. When my motive is therapy, I don't put too much focus on that. It can sometimes be a distraction. To be honest, when you're how to put it, like when you're looking for proof, then it's a way of saying I don't believe my own experience. I'm saying that I don't care whether your experience is true or not. It's your experience, and we're working with that to get to the bottom of the issue that is presenting. So yes, there are many instances where people check out their identities, and I can think of one or two, although I haven't brought up any paperwork or anything like that for the show. But I can think of someone who lived in Christchurch, and someone else who took a boat to the States, soldiers in France that went off on the Crusades at appropriate times and so on, and come back with booty, etc. I can think of many things like that. Yet for me, the real value in the past life regression is in working on the themes and the meanings and the natures of the relationships to enable a person to find their own form of healing. Yeah, that's the bit that I focus on.
Although, in a wider perspective, for the sort of benefit of mankind, humankind, or whatever, that you're kind of building up, along with other therapists, other regression people, that you're building up a picture that seems to suggest that we all come from these other lives, and we go through a succession of different lives, and in between states we go to spirit worlds or whatever, afterlife points and things, so that they kind of build up this whole picture of the whole kind of plan, if I use that in a very loose term, plan of mankind, if you like, where we're going from one lifetime to another to build up certain experiences for whatever reason that may be. But obviously, you're patching them up by sorting them out, if you like, by doing this therapy to go back in to understand who they were and what happened to them in previous lives and things, which is fascinating stuff. Later on, we're coming up to a break shortly, but later on, we'd like to talk more about your research of the various challenges you've had with. I mean, Andy mentioned it, darker things on maybe the alien side, or other forces that may not necessarily be alien in itself, because obviously you've had perhaps a bit of a mixed bag of experiences with both the good and the bad. But we'd also like to talk about in part two, or maybe if you've got a little bit of time to talk about it now, is that when people maybe go between lives and they might talk a bit about their experiences in a spiritual world. Do you get any of that come through?
Oh, yes, indeed, yeah. Well, for reviews, I spoke about Michael Newton earlier. Journey of Souls, a pioneer into life between lives regressions. And really, we someone can go to a past life. What happens at the end of it? Where then? What happens? We follow that and discover a bit more about who they are and what they're about. Discover a bit more of why they chose to come into this particular life, in this particular family, with these particular challenges, and come to realize that's not made to do anything, that you choose to do it. I sort of describe it as a bit like, well, going to night school on a Wednesday evening, and it's rainy and it's cold and you really don't want to do it, but you want to do what it gives you. You want that qualification that gets you a better job or whatever it might be. You want to, and it's an urge. It's not like a rational, logical exercise. It's a feeling. It's just being drawn to do this. Although it's blissful and it's wonderful in this between life state, you feel drawn to do more and more. You feel like you really want those
Wednesday evenings.
So, give a description of how they describe it.
I was going to say, Andy, we've got to come up to a break. Okay. The break, if we can't remember that point.
Okay.
All right, then.
All right, everybody, we're talking to David Graham about past lives, reincarnation, hypnotherapy, and we'll be back after these messages.
This here is Maynard from down south in Tennessee, and my family came to this country on the Mayflower. So I embraced my British roots by listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Boy, howdy, now I gotta go get me some pork rinds.
Hi, welcome back to the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, bringing you the best in paranormal topics from presenters around the world, you could say, because we're actually getting very international. It's not just the UK now. We've got some very international presenters out there. So, and there's lots of people listening to us around the world. So that's great. Thank you very much for your audience. So anyway, we're talking back with David Graham. We're talking about hypnosis, hypnotherapy, talking about past lives and lives between lives. And that was a question that Andy was asking about the experiences of what it's like. Andy, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I'm quite interested in the kind of in-between area, in terms of what kind of environment it has, or what kind of people you meet, what actually happens, what the process is. So yeah, David, take it away. Inform us what it's like in the in-between.
Well, typically, when I regress clients to that area, they seem to become lighter and lighter. Indeed, I usually encourage them to shed the heavier energies and see what happens to them. I usually do is following the end of a past life, which may have been a peaceful death, but it may have been a violent death. And I'll give them a chance to heal and become lighter and lighter still, and move. And that seems to be the trajectory, if you like. They're just becoming lighter and lighter all the time, and they may meet with other spirits, and it's a really joyful occasion. I think many people have heard of the near-death experiences where they might see family and so on coming to them from a light, and it's kind of like that. And they go further and further into the light, and they'll review quite often what's happened in a past life. They'll explore what's happening in their life now and the challenges. They may go on to meet members of their own soul group. They may go on to meet a council, that's a council of advisors, for want of a better expression, where they'll help with a review. Now, the way it seems to happen is that nobody tells anyone to do anything. They're encouraged, a soul rather, is encouraged to reflect on themselves and to understand themselves, and also gain an understanding of what they want to do, how they want to go forward, what they need to do to go forward. And in understanding those issues, they start to consider what sort of life they want to go into next time round. Now, when they're there, it's just it's kind of described as a blissful, joyful place. Often when I talk about past life stuff, I'll refer to that place as a place where we feel most at home, most at peace with ourselves. And so this task of coming into a human incarnation with all the restrictions and the challenges, that's usually negatively charged challenges, are really coming way, way, way out of our comfort zone. And it's really when we're out of our comfort zone and so on that we start to do work that helps us to change, to develop, to evolve. Yeah, is how it seems to me.
So have they described the environment that they're in? Is it similar to an earthly plane in terms of the way it looks, or are they kind of creating it for themselves using their own consciousness, kind of thing?
They created it for themselves using their own consciousness. Yeah. Some of them see like Roman pillars and grand buildings and churches, and some see something completely different, castles or whatever. So it's a creation in that sense. Okay. But it's a creation. It's an apparatus that gets them to where they need to be to take on some important understandings of themselves and who they are and what they're doing here and their soul journey. So it's engaging with our power, if you like, of intention, of our power to create our own reality, that we're in that place and that we get to understand more about what's inside us. And that's what I encounter time and time again. And not just me, but I won't speak for anyone else, but I know many, many, many others who say similar kind of stories about that. Yeah, at that place.
Now, addressing the kind of the little bug that I have with all of this, and the kind of the little niggle, is there is a concept, and you probably come across it, that we are in some kind of prison planet kind of holographic matrix type thing? And in fact, could it be that the white light is kind of like a soul trapping device where basically you get plucked up and then dumped back into another
like cheese in a mouse trap, you mean?
Yeah, and dumped into another body, kind of for reincarnation almost immediately. What's your kind of viewpoint on that, David?
Well, I just mentioned a moment ago about how we create our own reality, and if somebody is creating that particular reality, I can't argue with it. It's their creation, and it's how they understand it. I think most importantly is the feelings, the energy that you sense, and the kind of resonance that you feel, and whether this is for real or whether it's something that's a bit bogus. Now, I've encountered instances where something that's not quite pucker has tried to pretend that they're benevolent spirits, but the feeling hasn't been the same. And really, that's rather than our human, logical, rational understanding of this is secondary, really, to our intuition, our feeling over what something is like, or whether it feels right for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's kind of like, I want to believe that when you go into the white light, you do genuinely meet your loved ones and do go into, like, as you say, a joyful, blissful state, and I'm very much hoping that is the case. But there are reports I've heard from various sources where, you know, it is kind of like a control grid. There are kind of like more malevolent forces kind of keeping humans dumbed down. And the reason we have such short lives, because most people, you know, the average, you know, life is between 70 or 80 years. Some people live longer, a lot shorter. The reason is that we don't learn too much to try and break out of it. And then once we get reincarnated, we're back to square one, learning everything from scratch. It's almost keep them intelligent enough to kind of keep society going and operate machinery, but not too intelligent to let the sheep kind of work out how to get past the sheepdogs, kind of thing.
It's as you're saying that, it sounds like a very human rationale for a skeptical rationale for something that may be bogus. Okay, I can't, some people will see it in that way. I don't. The difference for me is in how it feels. That's the acid test, if you like. We can all be fooled, but I don't think so, not repeatedly like this, and also in whether it makes a difference for a person. So an argument like that seems to be about, well, who's in control here? And is it some dark forces that are just playing games with us? Or is it something different? My experience of dark forces, it's all about control and fear. But my experience of light entities is that it's about freedom to mess up, and also I don't want to go into the positive, negative things, but a kind of benevolence in that an invitation to know yourself better and to enjoy being who you are more. These are the key things to me, I think. I think the descriptions light, dark, positive, negative are probably not sufficient or not satisfying on their own. It's actually, what does this mean to you? What's it feel like? You know, does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Do you know the difference? What do you prefer, feeling good to feeling bad? It's kind of that. When in a nutshell.
When you was regressing your brother, you mentioned to us about where it was going, and it kind of took a completely different turn. I mean, that's obviously, was that a good or bad or completely just unexpected?
It was, the final session was completely unexpected. He went back to a life where he was a student to a master, and he was badgering this master to help him to understand alchemy. And the master was saying, no, you're not ready yet. Just go and play with the children, go into nature, and we'll come back to it at another time. And that go and play with the children, go into nature sounds a bit patronizing in one sense. Yeah, it dawned on me later on, actually, it's not. It's not about learning things through a textbook. It's not about studying science. It's actually about knowing yourself, going into those places that have more meaning to you. And anyway, during that session, there's something that was that really astonished me. It became clear that the master and the student in that life, which seemed to be about 30,000 years ago, actually were sitting there waiting for us. They're waiting for my brother, and they seemed to even understand that it was me that was regressing him. And of course, how can that be? With our traditional understandings of past, present, and future, and time and how it works, how can that be? How can they know that? How can they be there waiting for us? And what were they waiting for? So that threw me into a completely different understanding, a different dimension of what's actually going on with us as souls, with the planet, with the universe. How does all this work? Is it actually past life regression, or is it something that's happening in a parallel place? Is it a different version of us? And so we went into really fascinating areas. Now, that session was cut short, and I simply didn't have the presence of mind to ask all the intelligent questions. I was asking about how alchemy works, and it became clear that I wasn't ready either. So then it's understanding, well, how does time work, and when we go up into these different dimensions, how do we understand this? What's time for? What is power? How can we have this this understanding of past, present, and future? And I've come up with all sorts of ideas and theories about it, but that was an experience that was really quite really wrong-footed me. I had to think again about everything then. I've had one of the ones since then of a similar nature, where I took a client back to a place that turned out to be the Temple of Amun it's in the Sahara Desert, somewhere. It's in Egypt, but close to the Libyan border rather than near to the Nile. And again, someone was waiting there. Her past life personality, a master that was with them. The Temple of the Moon was a place where there was an oracle, and Alexander the Great went there during his day as well to gain wisdom, etc. And so when this client went back there, that they were waiting once more. And again, how does this work? It's again, it's about time. What is time? And I kind of think about it in a similar way to, in a similar way to matter. If you're looking at a chair, for example, you might feel the solidness of the chair, but if you get an enormous electron microscope, you go down and see the space between the molecules, and it's mainly space. And so it isn't quite what it seems. And the similar kind of thing with time. And it's almost as though there's parallel existences playing out all around us at the time. How many? Who knows? But it seems to be that way. I wonder if you had any thoughts on how time works.
I've actually heard, and I read this many, many years ago. I don't know if you're familiar with Jane Roberts at all.
Yeah.
She produced the Seth material. That's right.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, she was sort of kind of on the scene, and this is really before the scene got started, I should add. I think it was in the mid-60s through to about 1984 that she was channeling this entity, which initially started through the use of an Ouija board and her own psychic experiments with her husband. And this entity made himself known, and eventually they dispensed with the use of this Ouija board, and she just used to go into a trance and he used to come through. And basically he developed all this philosophy, which became known as the Seth material. It's worth a read for anyone interested. And basically I think he produced about 5 or 6 books, maybe even more actually. And also private manuscripts as well that haven't been published. I actually did get a letter, I think, from her husband many, many years later, because I just wrote a little kind of fan letter to them after Jane had died. I just wrote to say thanks for the books, they were really great, and I was very pleased to get a little card back from him. But Seth, he talked about the nature of time, and he said there is no past as you think of it, and there's no future as you think of it. Everything happens in the eternal present, the eternal now, which I found really hard to understand. It took me a long, long time to kind of grasp it, and the way I try and explain it to people, and it's for those people that remember 78 records rather than CDs or MP3s that we've got today and downloads and things. If you took a record where if you held it at a certain light, you could see the different tracks or songs on that LP, long playing record. There might be 5 on one side and you flip it over and there's another 5 on the other. You can just kind of see the shading on the black vinyl where you know that the grooves are a certain deeper depth, where you know there's actually a song in there, and then it changes, like you can see a thinner line like the rings of Saturn almost, where you know there's silence and then there's another song. And the way I sort of envisage it is that to experience that music you had to put it on a record player, put the stylus in the groove, and it would go round at 78 revolutions per minute or whatever it was, and you'd hear the music, and then it'd go to silence. And then about 5 or 6 seconds later, the next song would start. Again, you're playing it on the stylus. But if you took the record off and held it under the light, you'd see all those songs at once, including the silences, because the angle you're holding it at. So in other words, all those songs were existing at the same time from a different perspective. But to experience them and to get into the feeling, the emotion and everything, you'd have to run it through a stylus. And that's the analogy I kind of work with when I'm trying to explain it to people about simultaneous time. So
yeah, I use a similar analogy as well. I see it that way too. Yeah.
You could do it with TV sets and things like that. 10 TV sets loaded on top of each other, playing different history channels of different time zones. But you've got the same actor playing a different role in each film, but you're watching all those films at the same time. And it seems to apply to so many other. Sorry, I've interrupted you. It seems to apply to so many other things. We, in my view, we create our own reality. Well, this is what Seth said.
We create our own reality, and so it's down to us what sort of reality we want to create. We can create a pretty miserable reality, or we can create a joyful and blissful reality for ourselves. One's just as real as the other. It takes us to different places.
And I wonder, when you talked about that you've regressed people and those masters were waiting for you in that past time, I'm wondering if actually that you in this life, being the regression teacher, if you like, or therapist, you're actually the master in this life, but you're actually going back to a former self of your life as a master doing the teaching in the previous lifetime. It just occurred to me as you were talking about, I thought, maybe an interesting parallel.
Well, I don't even think about that. That's stuff like that goes to your ego, and I don't really want to go there. But if that is true, then how come I'm making such a mess this time around?
Stuck with the alchemy.
That's right. Yeah, but in that sense, we're all just on all we really know is what's happening to us, what we experience. We may learn things at school, but it's really what we're experiencing now that has meaning for us, that gives us our knowing, and whether we perceive ourselves as very advanced or as a novice is neither here nor there. It's all we actually know is here we are, we're doing it, we're on that wheel, if you like, but which part of the wheel, it doesn't actually matter, is how I see it.
And so obviously this reincarnational thing, the people being regressed, has been happening for a few years, but I mean, hypnosis has been around for sort of like, was it the 1870s or 50s or something?
Oh, you can go back to Greek, the ancient Greeks,
really?
and the Egyptians.
Now, there's rediscovered, I suppose,
evidence
by Mesmer,
yeah. Well, there's been other civilizations where they appear to be far more advanced than ours in some ways, and so knowledge of the self and knowledge of the world around us seems to be much more advanced to our knowledge of the world. Whatever our knowledge of the world might be now, I'm not sure I can trust those that have power in this world to share it in a benevolent way. But it seemed that in some environments, at least in some cultures, that there's a much greater understanding, especially of metaphysical phenomena.
Why do you think there is this kind of prohibitive kind of nature towards the alternative kind of ideas like reincarnation, like spirit worlds and things like that? Why is the West so anti that kind of thing, do you think?
Well, I don't profess to be any kind of expert on giving an answer like that, but it does occur to me that it threatens their illusion of control. It implies that there's something bigger, greater, something that they don't understand, and something that they not necessarily able to work with. That is present. It's the same with ETs. If a load of spaceships showed above the UK now, or America, or China, or whatever, how would people react to that? How would governments react to it? How would people? Because it really challenges our lifetime beliefs for many, many, many people. And my experience is that many people are reluctant to let go of some of their deeply held beliefs, even when they have experiences that tell them just the opposite.
I think with the establishment, it's not just like a control thing. It's also kind of like a scared to let go of what they think they know.
Yeah, sure.
It's a kind of like, we believe in this. This is our dogma. We can't possibly be wrong, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then if something comes along to completely disprove what they believe, it's almost like the medieval church. You can't go against the medieval church at that time, otherwise you get burnt at the stake. And there's that kind of feeling in the establishment at the moment. And rather than burning at the stake, which is gone, it's now kind of disreputable reputation. And it's kind of you might lose your job, you might lose your pension, you might lose your standing within your peer community, and all of that kind of. But it's the structure of it seems very medieval church to me.
Yeah, I can go with that completely. Yes, and yet it does seem like change is coming one way or another. I'm not going to predict how. I don't know how. I don't think about it too much, to be quite honest. If you try to analyze it and create a story for it, you can kind of distort it, I think. But there does seem to be a feeling, and lots of people talking about change of a significant nature is coming.
I'm going to raise something that kind of happened to me when I was younger, that I always thought was just a crazy hallucination or dream, but then kind of later came to realise it might be a bit more than that. So I'll ask this: Have you come across any of your clients who describe not so much greys or reptilians or Nordics or anything, but kind of troll-like creatures in kind of brown hoods, almost like Jawas in Star Wars, but without the bright red eyes. Have you come across that at all?
As kind of entities, unpleasant entities, yes, I have encountered that, yeah.
Do you know what they're
something that's similar? I don't really know that much about the nature. I make the distinction: are they welcome here or aren't they welcome here? And act on that. And usually with something like that, I'm always a bit wary when there's hoods over their heads. You know, there's something that's there's a part of them that they're not being open about. Yeah. So my reaction is usually, you've got to go.
I kind of felt that as well. I mean, I'll briefly tell you what my experiences were that I thought were just dreams or whatever, but they were slightly more than dreams. I used to often remember being in my bed. I didn't see any greys or anything, but I remember kind of like with me in my bed floating out of the room and through like the glass of the windows. Had a big window in my bedroom, floating through the glass, and then ending up in a car park right next to my house. Now, what made this dream different is normally in dreams you don't get a sense of temperature and you don't get a sense of wind. But I distinctly felt wind against my kind of like my face. I realised it was quite cold. Temperature-wise, and I could look up and see the stars. I don't remember a UFO or spaceship, but I do remember kind of Jara-like beings, small kind of figures in kind of like hooded monk's robes type thing. I don't remember being on board a craft. I don't remember any medical procedures, anything like that. But I've always kind of like had like a psychic intuition or had premonition type things as I was growing up, and always an interest in things like ghosts, UFOs, paranormal, hence doing this radio show. And I always thought it was a crazy dream until I started hearing about other abductees and contactees experiences that also describe floating through glass, because I thought, well, obviously it's going to be impossible to float through glass because it's a physical impossibility, therefore it must be a dream. But then listening to other abductees and contactees, they're describing the same thing. So I don't know what your take is on that. You know, that's kind of like my remembrance of it.
Well, were these repeated dreams, did you say?
I would have had, from memory, about 3 or 4 similar dreams. There's another dream that coincides with it. I'll go into that a bit later, but unless you want me to go into it now. But
first of all, it's dreams can be very powerful, and they can reflect. They can expose a reality that isn't normally seen, and we operate at many different dimensions, and we can tap into one of those dimensions that we don't normally tap into and become aware of that different reality. So that Jari that you mentioned, I can easily believe that it is real. I can more curious is what is interesting you.
Exactly, that's exactly it. My interest almost isn't who are they and kind of where they come from. My interest is more why you here and what you're doing to my body. Right. You can set an intention there that for them to go away, to say, well, whatever this is about, it's over now. The weird thing is the energy or the vibration to do with it, I didn't feel negative or positive or neutral. Okay. It's like I can't remember. These weren't exactly nightmares, I don't think, but neither were they positive contact either. I don't know whether they were just scientists, whether they were just kind of like, you know, tag them and bag them type thing, you know. Wildlife experts, they get hold of a shark, they, you know, put a tag in its fin and then let it on its way. I was wondering if it was something like that. I don't know.
It may be so. Yeah, it would be speculation for me to go into it too much, but it it sounds like it's a form of reality that isn't normally observed, and it's more curious on what the connection is and whether that connection is over now, whether it's been resolved already, or whether it needs resolving.
Yeah. Well, I brought it up basically just to see if there's any other people that have had similar experiences in terms of the Jarl type creatures.
Yes. I think so. I don't have a list of them with me, but I've certainly come across that sort of thing before, as I say, I'm quite wary when HUDs are involved, and why can't I see your face? It's the the question that comes to me. So I tend to be quite cautious in that case. Although it's not always the case, though. I've had other things where it's not been the case. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, presumably you've come across different agendas with different species. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what different species have in terms of what their agendas are.
To be quite honest, no, I can't talk to you. I'm not being gagged. I'm just, I think maybe I've overstated the ET part of my experience. I've encountered them, but I haven't had discussions about what their agendas are. Okay. That's my honest answer, I'm afraid.
Okay.
With the experiences that Andy was describing was reminiscent of the question I asked you about the repetitive nightmares that people have.
Yeah.
A kind of post-traumatic stress disorder maybe or something. I mean, could regression therapy help people that suffer from nightmares?
Yes, it certainly can. We can go into that and try to understand what the origin of it is. It can be some kind of incident or trauma even that's gone on that hasn't been resolved properly, and we can hopefully get to the bottom of it and help a person to resolve it and come and be at peace with whatever's happened. Yeah.
And so some people might have experiences like that on a kind of subconscious experience in a dream state, nightmare state, things like that. But then other people might have post-traumatic disorders manifesting maybe as illnesses or that kind of thing. But you wouldn't necessarily find them in previous lives, those issues. I mean, it might be something from their childhood, or, I mean, how do you know where to pinpoint the cause of these things?
Well, exploring, I suppose, is the answer to that. If a person's not going to a past life that exposes it, then it implies that there isn't a past life experience. If they go into their childhood, then and they stay in their childhood, then it implies that's where it's all gone on. So it's mainly by looking at that sort of thing. And you're quite right. It's not all down to past life stuff, and past life stuff does. In my view, it brings you insight into it's self-exploration. It gives you an insight into what's inside, and some of the stuff that's not been conscious, it makes more conscious for yourself, and it invites a more wholesome understanding of who you are. So in terms of traumas like that, it can help resolve some of those traumas.
Yeah, you see, I many years ago, must be about 25 plus years ago now, I tried hypnotherapy, was regressed, and I say that in quotes because I wasn't really 100% certain if this is where I'm going with this, is that I lay there and kind of was relaxed by the hypnotherapist, and he says, right, let's go back into a past life. So I just came up, or concocted, so I thought, this little scenario, because I think what it is, it was expected of me to have a past life, and so I thought, I better come up with something quick. So I just made up what spontaneously came up to into my mind of some scenario, possibly influenced by my childhood of watching maybe movie westerns, because I think it depicted me in a western type of scenario, and I kind of sort of came up with some drama to do with that. Now, my own thinking was that I was concocting something.
Yeah.
The therapist seems to be quite happy that it was a past life thing. I mean, you must get that people are kind of maybe playing along because that's the rules of the game, as it were. I mean, does that happen?
Yeah. Yes, it happens. Sometimes it's wishful thinking or people are capable of making things up. However, I'd say to you, how come you made that up, whatever it is? How come that? And although you think that you're making it up, well, how come? How come you believe that? You know, what makes you believe that? Did it make a difference for you?
Probably have to say that the reason I probably think I made it up is that I've read a lot about hypnosis beforehand. Yeah. And I read about reincarnation beforehand. I read about spiritual things in the past. So I had a whole bank of information that I could have pulled it from, as it were, and also the media around me at the time of films, movies, that kind of thing. And that's how I you know, again, a skeptic would say that's how Neil has made it all up, or how he's concocted this idea. And I don't think, to be honest, I can't remember what it was now, I don't think it resolved the issues that I think I was maybe going there for, to be honest. Interesting as it was, although I do remember being a bit little phased out after a few sessions. In other words, I got into the car to drive away, and I remember turning up at the pub to meet people, and I was thinking, oh, I feel a bit out of my head on this, and I haven't even drunk a drink yet. I feel a bit sort of really defocused. So I suppose from that point of view, I was probably still in a kind of an alpha state or something.
Well, yeah, so something was happening for you, even whether you were making something up or you just think that you were making something up. Something was happening for you. If it made no difference for you, then I wouldn't pay it much mind. For me and for most people that I know that do this, it's really about the acid test. Does this make a difference for you? I don't really care whether you think it's a past life or it's a metaphor you've just created. That doesn't matter, but whether the issue that you've come for, whether that's become resolved to some extent, is what matters most. And again, we come down to reality. Let's say everything I'm talking about this evening, let's say it's all rubbish. Does it matter? Does it help you to know yourself when you have these experiences? Does it make a difference for you? Do you feel more complete, more whole, more at peace with yourself? These are the things that actually matter. And past life regression therapy is one avenue to help you to get there.
Would you say most of your cases are success stories in terms of people dealing with things and getting through things? Like, are there any abject failures with that?
Oh yeah. There's some people that I just haven't been able to help. That's so. I don't know how many, but there have been a few that I haven't been able to help in some form or another, and it can be for all sorts of reasons. And it's not so much about the client or me or who's to blame for it. It just hasn't worked in those cases. And I just have to accept that and recommend that they take a different approach.
Yeah, maybe some people don't want to be helped.
Yeah, but as I say, I'm not interested in blaming either the client or myself. It just hasn't worked, and that's fine. I just do what I do, and if it's something that a person's open to, then we can work with it. If it's something a person's not open to, then they're going to have reasons for that, and there may well be very, very wise reasons, and I'll just carry on doing what I do, and they can go their own way.
Yeah. Now it's interesting because I've seen hypnotists. I mean, Andy, you do a lot of these kind of live presentations with mind magicians or mind reader type acts as well. Andy's a clairvoyant, and he goes out and does demonstrations. But he's also got a few people that are in the entertainment industry, like mind reading acts and things like that.
Yeah, mentalists is what it is.
Mentalists, that's the word I'm using. Yeah.
So there's the guy I know that is, and this is quite rare within the kind of like their entertainment field, is somebody who regards himself as a psychic clairvoyant, but also mentalist as well. Historically, you'd usually have people like Darren Brown and James Randi, who are very kind of like into the mentalism thing, but don't believe at all in the psychics or the clairvoyant field. Whereas this particular guy that I know does. He is into the psychic and the clairvoyant side, but also does the mentalism as well. And his viewpoint is he takes on board everything, or whether it's body language or voice intonation or from spirit. He takes on board everything and just kind of like gives it back to the person, if you like, and kind of like they make of it what they will. That's his kind of philosophy.
Okay, yeah. So that sounds okay, actually. It sounds like he's using his human intelligence and observation skills, but he also is open to the metaphysical world and the clairvoyance and able to use it hopefully in a wise way with the person.
Yeah, he says it's very split in the kind of magical community. There's some people who are very hardened against anything actually paranormal and supernatural, but there's some who very much do believe in it, but a lot keep it in the closet. A lot of them have to kind of keep a lid on it because they got their reputations within the magicians community or the mentalism community, and it's this kind of like peer review kind of medieval church mentality where if you step outside the box then you're a heretic in some way.
Yes, it's the same in the psychology world, the psychiatry world, the academic science or consciousness study world. Some of them will embrace us, or some of them are very hostile to us. Yeah. To be honest, I don't want to be like them. No. I don't want to be competing with them to say, no, my version of the truth is the real truth. It's going into a place where there isn't an answer. Yeah. Really, this is what I do. This is how I understand it. Mm-hmm. By next year, I may have a different understanding. It might be, it might be anything different. But this is how it is now, and I can, only do what I do and be as open and honest about that as I can be, without saying this is the truth. Yeah, this is just what I'm experiencing, and I'm talking about the stuff that I have experienced along the way.
Yeah, Neil, did you have a question attached to that? Because
I was thinking on the entertainment side of things. Obviously, your mentalist friend there doing all these mind tricks, Darren Brown type of stuff, as well as a psychic thing. And then I was thinking about the fact that there's the hypnotists, the stage hypnotists, and they wouldn't regard themselves as hypnotherapists. But I've seen them on stage, and I did when I went and saw this hypnotherapist 25 plus years ago. I said to him, is there any good books that I can read on hypnosis? I really want to kind of understand this. And he said, there's a book you can get from the British Library. You wouldn't be able to get it from your normal library, but they could order it for you to borrow. And it was like a great big, thick, biblical-sized book on hypnosis or something. I can't remember what it was called now, but it was all about hypnosis. It had photographs in there. And I was really surprised to read a lot about it. And I can't remember the author. It might have been a few authors, but I think it's probably one. But it was like the big mammoth book of hypnosis or something. And it was quite impressive because it showed photographs of people, subjects that have been hypnotized to believe that a person in the room was invisible, and the person that was invisible was holding up, say, for example, a plate or some object, but the person who was hypnotized believed that this object was floating by itself because they just could not see the person holding it, which I thought was quite amazing. And I have seen similar things on stage where a hypnotist will say, you, after 3 seconds, will not see this guy on the stage. or you will not see me, the hypnotist, on stage. And so therefore he picks up someone else, a little young lad or something, and he runs around the stage with this young lad. To all intents and purposes, the hypnotist is completely invisible to the subject, and they can see this lad or young boy appear to be flying around the stage by himself. Is that thing really possible?
Well, I guess so. You're telling me that it's possible. I will say that it's something. It's a field that I haven't gone into, and I've no interest in going into it. My rationale, my purpose in doing what I do is for therapeutic reasons. It's extended into exploring. Who are we, etc. But I really haven't gone into the stage hypnosis. It just doesn't attract me. Yet, having said that, yeah, I'm sure it is possible. It is possible for that thing to happen, and you've witnessed it by the sound of it. I will say also that in regression, don't always use hypnosis. You can often work with body feelings, emotions, postulates. That's sort of thoughts like I can never succeed, things like that people have going on in their head. We can work with those. It's all about bringing them into an altered state of awareness. Hypnosis is one way of doing it, but it's only one way. There are other ways, and sometimes those other ways can be more effective. Or more take us right to the nub of where an issue lies.
Now, we spoke earlier about simultaneous time. Everything happens at once, and we've also talked about the past life issues that people go back to. There must have been people that have tried it, taking people into future lives. Is that something you've heard of?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, there's... I don't really take people into future lives myself. I struggle to see what the therapeutic benefit of it was, although I'm talking with some colleagues fairly recently and I'm beginning to bend a little bit. Maybe I will explore that a bit more now. But going into the future of this life, sort of just like in a timeline, into where you're going to end up if you take this on, and where you're going to end up if you go that route. And clients can come up with some pretty powerful impressions of where their life's going in that way. I mean, in future lives, there's training out there. You can do that.
So that could be equally therapeutic. As well as any
I don't know if it could be equally therapeutic. That's the bit I've struggled on, to be quite honest, whether it is really therapeutic. And I'm only just beginning to open up to the potential that, well, actually, maybe it is therapeutic, although I suspect it's got more to understanding your soul journey rather than actually dealing with stuff that's inside you that causes you issues.
I'd imagine it could be a potential future life rather than a fixed one, though, because obviously if you've got this create your own reality free choice thing, you can go off anything you want, and maybe the therapist and the patient somehow conjure up this potential future life that sounds fantastic, and the therapy is that because it sounds fantastic, it kind of I don't know, what's the word? Gives them a bit of a kick, as it were, to actually head in that direction, by setting a scene.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is whether it's what a person wants or whether it serves their interests or whether they understand it as serving their interests. We're talking in terms of creating our own realities, and that's so there. How real is it? I think it is real to a great extent. It's a version of reality that we can embrace or ignore. It's whether it serves us is the most significant aspect of it.
And you mentioned earlier that we were talking about the various types of entities. I mean, Andy talked about this hooded kind of Jawa type of creatures, dreams and things like that. Now, you said you've had kind of dark things happening with people. Is that coming from their subconscious, or is it something they've encountered in a previous life, or is it entities that are out there like spirit guide kind of entities that are dark?
There's entities out there that are not like spirit guide, but are dark. There's when a person dies, the usual process, as I understand it, at least, and you mentioned other people that have a different version of this, but as I understand it, the usual process is that a person dies and they go into the light, is the expression that's usually used, and they become that non-physical soul once more, and they find their way forward in that way. Some souls have trouble doing that, and they'll stay earthbound for a while, referred to as earthbound spirits. And my understanding is that this will might go on for a while, but time doesn't matter that much. You know, that you can stay around for a day or two, or a few hundred years if you choose. Time doesn't matter that much in terms of the eternity of the soul. It's all just another experience. Yet ultimately, my understanding is that they will eventually go to the light and reincarnate in some place or other. There are some that stay in a that kind of serve dark purposes, and I've had quite a few experiences like that. I had there was a period during my work where I started having weird experiences. I would have psychic attacks, and those psychic attacks, I realised there's a pattern to them. They would happen the evening before I'd see a new client, and when I worked with that new client, it was all about negative or dark energy that's in their energy system. That seems to be the major part of the work that day. And this was quite weird. It was the night before, and there's a definite pattern happening, and it was happening anyway. I spoke to many colleagues and asked them if they experienced this sort of thing, and no, they didn't. And then, so I resolved to try and get to the bottom of it, and I met up with another therapist, and I went to one of my lives that was quite dark, and then we met a woman who travelled 5,000 miles to be in this place. It was in Northern Europe, and I'd gone there too. And I started getting psychic attacks from this particular lady. And how do I describe? She, if you can imagine Morticia out of the Addams Family, it's like a black lipstick and the works. It was. And really stood out as being very different from everyone else that was there. But I started getting psychic attacks from this lady, and it was 24/7 for a week. It was full on. It was, one of the weird things is that I was so calm about it. I've developed a technique for protecting myself that's sort of almost on the spot. I developed that, and I was dealing with it all and so on. But I wondered, where's this all come from? Why is it happening? And I had a regression to actually explore that. Who's made this happen? Who's sent this? And encountering black witches and such things, and really being confrontational with them and saying, who sent you? Who sent this? And then eventually going to, where did all this come from? And I find myself going to ancient Egypt, and I was going deep underground, and there's a chamber there, and there was about 12 of us, 12 people there, all stood around in a circle, and we appeared to be doing a ritual. And when the therapist says to me, "Well, where are you in this?" I thought, "Oh my God, I'm one of them." And I realized I'd had a life where I was actually working with a lot of dark entities. And not only I had a life, I had a series of lives doing that in ancient Egypt, until it got so terrifying that I split. I went across to the light, and they really don't like that. And so what happens, they found out that I was here, and they started a kind of vendetta. And as I understood it more and more, I began to realize what was happening. One of the reasons the attacks were happening was that I eventually realized that I got this ginormous hole in my aura that was all about self-forgiveness. And as soon as I started working on that, those entities that would I'd literally see them coming up towards me, coming up a couple of feet away. As soon as I started working on my aura, they started to recede. Anyway, there's a long story attached to it. But
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
it's like the therapist is getting attacked across time.
Yes, and I imagined it's because I was a therapist and I was dealing with sort of dark stuff and upsetting their plans. But then I realised that no, it's more personal than that. And it's so that happened, but also the experience, there's more to it, and I've had to deal with a lot of them, but it got me to a place where I was much stronger in dealing with them and much more aware of my own sense of personal power, because if you stop and think about it all, this is just a challenge. That's all it is. And I could even say to myself, well, how do I know any of this is real? Is it all in my head? Yeah. I had lots of corroborative evidence to demonstrate to me that it was real. There was stuff out there that was doing all this. But, I had to sort of take a detached view of it all and try to understand what was going on.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, David, we've actually come to the end of the show.
Okay.
So, sorry to cut you off there, but we're actually running out of time. But if you can just let people know if they want to find out more about the kind of work you're doing. You're also doing an appearance of Probe this year, the Probe conference.
Yeah, that's right.
St Anne's near Blackpool. So maybe you want to give details of that and how they can find out more about the kind of work you're doing.
Well, the website is phoenixprobe.org, I think it's called. I had to think there. Phoenixprobe.org. It's in Lancashire, Lytham St Anne's. It's on March the 23rd, 24th, the weekend there, where there are lots of speakers. I'm one of them, and talking about ETs, UFOs, healing stuff. Stuff that's out there that offers different perspectives on what life is and how life works for us.
And if people want to find out about regression therapy, maybe yourself or an organisation that you work with?
Yeah, there's Earth-Association.org is a body that I've worked with a lot. That's they do things like set a code of conduct and training standards for regression. There's Past Life Regression Academy, PLRA, that's based in England. Earth is a worldwide organisation. And if someone is considering it, I'd just contact the person, go with your intuition over it. Also ask about training, etc.
Great.
Like that.
All right. Well, I'd like to say thank you very much to David Graham for taking part in our show tonight. It's been fascinating to find out about past lives and possibly future lives and simultaneous lives. It's been really interesting. So thank you to David. Andy, any last words before we go?
Yeah, really interesting one. We'll have to have David back. And if people want to join us on Facebook, just search for the Paranormal Peep Show. And we'll put some links up. Hopefully, Neil, if you want to put some of David's links up on there. I found the Apollo Detective link, so I've put that up on there as well. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. I found it interesting talking to you guys, and I hope that I've been able to answer most of your questions, if not all. But yeah, and thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks David.
For joining us on the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.